All right, so now that we've learned about the squat and how we can use external rotation in our hips to help us move better, we can look at it when we're actually sitting. So now granted, we don't need to do this and like lower down slowly while we're sitting. That would be a bit funny, especially if you ladies are wearing some type of short skirt. However, we can still follow the same mechanics as we sit down. It gets even more interesting when we stand up. However, sitting down, we know that our feet should be about shoulder width apart. As we come down, due to the law of external rotation, our knees should open up. And since we have gravity working in our favor, we don't have to drop down and fall on the ground, but we can use gravity to allow us to sit back down. After we've sat down, this is what gets interesting, because when we stand up, I've specifically chosen this bench because a lot of times what people will do in their chair is they have the ability to go under like that. That is why I chose this bench, because if I wanted to, I could cheat and stand up like that. However, this is not what we want to do, because when we stand, it is basically like doing a squat, right? We're standing from a squatted position. So we would never squat with our knees going so far forward, especially after we've learned about the law of external rotation. So we don't want to do it here. Often, this can be alone the back and the knee pain that people are having, simply because how many times do you sit and stand per day? So from here, what we want to do is we want to use our body's natural mechanics to our advantage. So we've got something called our center of gravity, and we've also got something called the base of support. Now, the base of support is basically the circle around you in which you can lean into before falling over. So if you've ever drank too much alcohol, you realize that your base of support gets a little bit smaller, and that's why it's much easier to fall over. So if we use the base of support, and of course the center of gravity, to our advantage, we do not need to stand up in this broken position. And what I mean by that is if we sit in a chair or in a bench, whatever, and I'm leaning like this, which direction is it very easy for me to go? To fall backwards, which is why we have the backrest usually in a chair. So if this is a bit deep, so if I'm like right here, and this is where the backrest is, and I want to stand up, if my center of gravity is here and my base of support is around me, well, my base of support is basically here and my center of gravity is there. So I would argue that if the base of support is this circle, then my center of gravity is towards the back end. Now in physio school, if you will, we often say nose to the toes when the old people need to stand up. So that would mean when they need to stand up, they lean forward, and you will realize that allows you very easily to stand up. That is because when I'm leaning forward, my center of gravity is now going more towards the front of the base of my base of support and not the back end. So if we combine that with the law of external rotation, because we realize when we're here, the knees almost get in our way. But if we know as we go into flexion, our knees are allowed to open up for a more stable position, that now allows us to stand up much easier. Now, you don't need to do it that slow. You can do something very quick, just like this. However, the idea that so many people, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, look at your coworkers and colleagues and classmates and see often when they stand up, they're putting their feet back and they're standing up in this position where the knees are driving completely forward, and that is where the pressure is. What we want is our hips to allow us to stand up, but we want to use gravity, if you will, in the mechanics of our body in our advantage. So nose to the toes would bring the center of gravity more towards the base of support, which allows us to stand up easier. So correct sitting would be the squat-like motion, standing and sitting. The only difference is we've got something that breaks it up in between.